and welcome. My name is Evgeny Rusakov and you're watching TVP World, interview from Vilnius. Azerbaijan is preparing documents for filing in international courts against Russia in connection with the crash of the Azerbaijan Airlines plane. According to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, Azerbaijan has not received a single clear answer from the Russian side for 7 months. As a result, relations between these countries are in a tense state. To discuss these relations, we are joined today by the political scientist and director of Institute of International Relations and Political Science, Margarita Šešelgytė. Margarita, thank you for joining us today. Glad to see you in our studio.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Before we go on with our main topic, so this current news, recent news about the drone that came from Belarus. What's your take on this, briefly?
I think it's difficult to assess at this moment, and the state institutions are digging into this matter. We expect to get more information as day goes on, but the general climate is quite suspicious, because we know that
it's not the first drone, in fact.
It is not the first drone. It's the second drone in
actually
10 or 15 days.
Exactly, yes.
And the second is already not a coincidence, probably, and it shows some trend. And moreover, in autumn or in September, in the middle of September, we are expecting big exercise, big military exercise, Zapad, which is conducted biannually by Russia and Belarus. And of course, this military exercise might have a conventional part, but also it has a hybrid part. And drones, when you look at the war in Ukraine, but also elsewhere, is a part of the hybrid activities that Russia is conducting. So somehow one becomes suspicious that we might be facing already the initial stages of the forthcoming exercise. But as I said, it's too early to judge, and I guess we will get more information from the institutions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now let's talk about our main topic. So again, before discussing Russian and Azerbaijani relations, I would like to ask you this. So how did it happen that after the collapse of Soviet Union, Lithuania stayed out of Russia's sphere of influence, whereas Azerbaijan looks like starts doing it just right now after 30-something years?
I believe that Baltic countries, when it comes to dissolution of Soviet Union, was a particular case. Even within the Soviet Union, they were always looked upon as a bit different, as a bit more pro-Western, as a bit more independent. And in fact, these interdependencies, although they were very strong, but to a certain extent a bit weaker than in comparison to countries like Azerbaijan, Georgia, etc., etc. There was also a cultural difference. We were more leaning towards West, probably, in our mindset. And then when the Soviet Union was dissolved, I think that there was a very, very fast movement towards the Western institutions in the Baltic countries,
yeah.
European Union and NATO, and we were doing a lot in terms of transforming our institutions, transforming our relationships, trying to cut all possible interdependencies with existing interdependencies with Russia. We were having a lot of reasons to detangle ourselves from Russia, and finally, I think that this is the strongest factor is the integration into EU and NATO. These were the main factors why Baltic countries were different from other republics of Soviet Union, former Soviet Union republics after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. But I think that one of the factors why we're facing turbulence in Caucasus region, but also in Central Asia. Asia is the shrinking power of Russia as a regional player.
Exactly. So this is what I wanted to talk about. So Dmitry Peskov, press secretary of Vladimir Putin, stated that it is very important that Russians are respected in Azerbaijan. whereas Azerbaijan is not afraid to escalate the conflict and is, as I already said, is preparing a lawsuit in international courts regarding that plane crash. So, first of all, why is Russia so cautious with Azerbaijan? And second question is, how dare Azerbaijan behave like this?
Yeah, it's a very good question, but I think that it just shows a changing power balance in the region, where Russian leverage to influence what's happening in the region is shrinking, and its power is getting more and more diminished due to a number of factors, due to the fact that Russia itself is losing the power all over the region, and the extended region, not only South Caucasus, but also, as I said, the Central Asia, but also other Middle East. So Russian power is shrinking, but also Russia has started the major war in Ukraine. And its inability to achieve the considerable victory in a short time also is sending the signals to other players that Russia is not as strong as it's claiming. So the credibility of Russia and its ability to pose itself as a just player, the player which has certain values, is also getting lower. And I think that this is reflected also in South Caucasus, and also reflected on how Azerbaijan is making their strategic calculation what to do. On the other hand, I think that Azerbaijan over the last years has been empowered in a number of areas. On one hand, the successful war in Nagorno-Karabakh, I think that was a very strong boost of confidence for Azerbaijan and its leadership, that they are capable of making their own decisions without the support of or permission of the players like Russia. The second important thing is economy. Economy-wise, it's doing not so bad. And what Azerbaijan leadership is trying to do at the moment is to have this path also not only to Turkey, to Russia, but also to Europe. European Union is one of the major trade partners of Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan is trying to create the image of the just player economically, and independent and just, trying to show that it's a credible player for the European Union, in particular in the area of energy resources. So I think that the economic and political issues are very important in terms of empowering Azerbaijan in taking a stronger position vis-à-vis Russia. And Azerbaijanese leaders just said that Russia has to respect us. We are not vassals of Russia's. We are equal players. So I think that this is also a very important point, which leads also to another very prominent example, is the negotiation of the peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Exactly. Russia is not taking part in this negotiation.
By the way, you've mentioned this, that Azerbaijan wants to be treated as an equal partner. So here's my next question then. Do you think Russia, not Russia, do you think Kremlin is capable of doing so? Or they are not, like they see equals just amongst China and USA?
I think that there are two sides of this answer to this question. On one side is, of course, the mindset of Russian leadership. Current Russian leadership is
big brother to everyone.
Very clear. It's they are the big power, and there was very recently the interview by Farid Zakharia on CNN. His interview with Alexander Dugin. So he was talking about sort of a multidimensional
main Putin's philosopher.
Main Putin's philosopher, which was talking about the multidimensional one-dimensional sovereignty, where the highest sovereignty belongs only to the countries like US, Russia, and China, and the rest are sort of in a very shady position. So I think that reflects the major thinking of Russian leadership. But on the other side, Russia cannot allow itself to get into conflict with Azerbaijan. So to a certain extent, it has to maintain this relationship and this sort of a respect in this relationship, not to get into the escalation. So therefore, I don't think that this conflict is doomed to escalate. I think on contrary, that over the time, it's going to be dissolving. Yeah.
How crucial is this Caucasus region? How crucial is it for Russia?
It is important for a number of reasons. On one hand, for Putin, it is important to have these countries as the zone of interest of Russia, the allies of Russia, and this is in particular important also for internal use, because there are always constantly these messages of greater Soviet Union, this brotherhood. So that's the cultural, I would say, ideological, value-based political aspect. But also in terms of economy, for instance, Azerbaijan plays a very, very important role as a logistical and infrastructural chain for Russia towards the south, towards Iran and India. And Iran is, as you know, in particular after the war in Ukraine started, plays a major role as a supplier for Russia of drones, but also other materials. So many of the routes go through Azerbaijan. So Azerbaijan can stop this flow, and then that would be very bad news for Russia. So in that sense, Azerbaijan is important. On the other hand, the relationship between Azerbaijan and Turkey is also playing a significant role in the calculation of Putin, although these countries are separate. But as they say, to one nation, two countries, although they might have separate politics, but there is a very strong alliance. So I think that this relationship is also meant to be judged in the strategic calculation of Russia.
My last question, briefly. Again, we talk about Caucasus. It's a very complex region. And do you think Europe and USA have enough understanding of this region to somehow, to accept it to our sphere of influence and partially take Russia's place?
It's a very good but very difficult question. I don't think that those countries at the moment are demonstrating this leaning towards the Western values. And when it comes to, in general, the promotion of Western values and where they are important, I think that the geography of pro-Western countries is a bit shrinking over the last years. So Caucasus, South Caucasus region is not an exception, and you can look at what's happening to Georgia. Azerbaijan is a bit different story. You can feel a bit of the warm-up over the last year because also Azerbaijan needs to create the image of a good partner for European Union, and in particular because of the war in Ukraine and sanctions against Russian energy resources, Azerbaijan gained the importance for European Union. So we'll see how it's going to develop in the future, but it seems that in the region there are multiple players, and then there's increasing competition over the influence in the region.
Nothing more to add. Margarita, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
And I would like to remind our viewers that our guest for today was a political scientist and director of Institute of International Relations and Political Science, Margarita Šešelgytė. You're watching TVP World. Stay with us.